Hi everyone, Nemo here. Welcome to the Nemo and Co. conference halftime show. This is where we watch a session of conference, me and a guest, and then we come together just afterwards to talk about our initial impressions, what we thought. We basically do this so you don't have to watch conference. And my guest tonight is someone that I'm really excited to spend some time with. It is Priesthood Dispatches. Now, I'm going to let him explain what it is he does in just a moment, but he's just another part of this fantastic British movement that we've got starting up at the moment. So let's bring him into the conversation.
Hi
PD, how you
everyone,
doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Hi.
Um, Conference was interesting.
Yeah.
um, Priest of Dispatches. Basically, I'm here to tell some of my funny stories from my time at church, but now your funny stories from your time at church. So, war stories that you might exchange at a lunch appointment or just with a friend. So we've got the blog, we've got an after dinner chat series, which Nemo was on last night with our conference preview, where we just discuss some of the more comical aspects of the church and the culture of the church. And yeah, it's going well, and I think it's quite cathartic just to laugh at ourselves a little bit and where we've been in life.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I tell you what, there was some definitely laughable things at this session of conference, wasn't there? So
Yeah,
just a
absolutely.
warning to the viewers. PD gets a little bit fruity. I tend to be quite straight laced, but he brings the sass and the banter. So just be warned, things may not be as kosher as they usually are,
I was
but
going to
that's
be
fine.
really good, but
Were
you've
you?
totally just unleashed. Yeah,
Unleash the
like
beast.
my wife's listening, so you have to be straight laced and you know can't say
Excellent.
rude things.
Well, I get fruity guests on so that I can remain straight laced, but then we get some banter factor. So that's
Awesome.
that's how I do. I just other people can be the fall guy for me. So let's start off, shall we? Let's talk
Yep.
about this session of General Conference. First thing, oh, actually, tell you what, I'll just do a quick recap of this morning's session. It's
Yeah.
not technically covered under what we're doing, but basically the things I picked out were that Nelson said that there would be pure truth coming through in this first session, or throughout the entire conference, actually. This is a man who has stood at that very same pulpit and lied to the membership of the church, so I'm not sure I trust him too much. He said that we should be looking out for pure doctrine, pure truth, and pure revelation. So I challenge you all to look out for that if you are watching conference, and I'll certainly be seeing if I can pick any of that out. And Elder Holland spoke about the parable of the rich young man while being an apostle for a church that has over $100 billion in an enzyme peak fund. So, pot kettle black, maybe? I
Yeah.
feel like he could learn something from that. Anyway, onto this session we've just watched together. Why don't you
Yes.
start us off?
So Saturday afternoon in Utah. So the second
Hmm.
session of conference. And I think the first thing that kind of came to me was the fact that they couldn't stop saying uh, that the choir was specifically a multicultural choir from northern Utah.
I know, it's bonkers.
They could just be normal people from northern Utah,
Well,
but
yeah,
just
the
make
north of
very
Utah is
clear.
just multicultural. Like,
Yeah,
surely, if that's the choir.
you know. So there were lots of non-white
Yeah,
people, which is fantastic. But
yeah.
they really had to push home the fact
They
that
were.
there were lots of non-white people there.
Yeah, yeah, they
Um,
really were, and we saw a female organist and a female conductor, and I want to say that the choir were really good.
they were.
They took it to another level for conference. Normally we have to deal with the same old Mac Wilberg arrangements of various hymns that you could predict in your sleep, but they really mixed it up with tempos, with key changes. They were brilliant.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm a raving apostate, but by the end of the 2 hours, I was still awake. And the last song was "This Is the Christ,"
mhm.
and my just over my rum and coke, I found myself singing "This Is the Christ," not even knowing. And my wife caught me, and she's like, "Oh, what are you?" I was just like, "It's just a catchy tune," but the choir
Yeah.
were amazing.
They were really good, but they couldn't stand just on the merits of that. It had to be pointed out that they were multicultural. Right at the end,
Yeah,
the Bonneville distribution bloke said the music for this session was provided by a multicultural
multicultural.
choir.
Yeah. I
Why?
wonder if I wonder if it's a different choir tomorrow if they're going to say that the music for this session is provided by a monocultural
Yeah,
choir.
by a homogenous choir of
Yeah,
white Utahns.
yeah. They've kind of like signaled that they need to state the race of the choir
Yeah.
prior to any singing actually taking place.
Speaking of stating that stuff, they also made a point of showing off their COVID measures, right? They did it
Yeah.
in this morning session. They did it in this one. They were saying everyone's been vaccinated. We've reduced the numbers in the choir, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So low key trying to call out some of those people that are kicking off over the vaccine. Really.
You know what? I thought they covered quite a few political things in this session. They covered the multicultural or the racist card. They covered the COVID card. Later on, we see they cover the mental health and suicide rate in Utah card. And then, I think I've got one more. They covered the whole basically. Sorry, Wendy. Wendy's back. She was here last
Wendy
night.
is back. Yeah, incredible.
But they basically said, don't listen to the government, don't listen to intellectuals, listen to whatever the prophet says. The living prophet. A few of them made a very big point of saying the living prophet, because obviously the living prophet's words are very different to the dead ones.
Yeah.
But I'm getting ahead of myself.
No. Well, I mean, we may as well mention it now that of all the speakers, only two of them didn't quote Russell M. Nelson.
Oh, it was a total
Right.
Rusty lover.
It was absolutely. It was only Stevenson and Bednar that didn't quote him. Everyone else, like he was quoted more than Christ. I'm pretty sure. I would wager. I don't have the stats right in front of me. I didn't get that detailed.
I wrote down in my copious notes. We were discussing
look
before
at that.
the amount of notes taken in these sessions. I took 5 A-side like full of notes.
That's I think a beauty.
Bishop, a high counselor, a missionary with nothing else to do in life, and I've never taken so many notes or been so interested, because when you actually listen to the speaker rather than waiting for manna from heaven or for some apparition to form him into Joseph or something like that, and you actually just listen to what this octogenarian is saying, it's mind-boggling. Like how we allow them to place political and social pressures in our lives, when you can just see that they're kind of going, well, we're going to go this way now, we're going to move everyone with us to there. Sorry.
It's like pulling the curtain back on the Wizard of Oz. It's like unveiling the puppet master. If you actually just stop and listen, you hear the way they are just trying to move the members around. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think a good example of that, it was Bednar's talk. Actually, should we go on to his talk? What have you got for what he said?
The first thing I wrote, again, something that I noticing new things about them, that Bednar has no earlobes. I'm sorry, like I'm no earlobe model,
right?
But he is just kind of like that.
Why do you think I hide mine?
I'd wear headphones, but I thought my face is already quite wide; they wouldn't fit in the actual frame. But he has no earlobes, and I thought that was fantastic.
Has no earlobes. There we go.
And just before we go there, another visual observation: if anyone actually does catch any of this session or any other session, the mask given to Russell M. Nelson is like it's like something out of Hannibal. It's far too big for him.
It is.
It's a big white one like this.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a plague mask. And I looked at him and I thought, he's quite a frail old man. Why did someone not give him a child's mask?
But you know what they're going to do, right? He's going to use that and say, as a very successful thoracic surgeon, he's gonna play the medical card about his mask and be like, "This is what witch doctors used to wear, and now I, as a medical professional, also wear this traditional mask."
Absolutely, but yeah, the mask absolutely destroyed me at the beginning.
Oh, hang on, someone's just put something wicked in the comments. Maybe that's why Bednar gave the famous earring shaming talk at BYU. He was projecting.
There it is. I can't have them, so neither can you.
Exactly.
No, awesome.
Excellent.
I'm so
Thank
glad
you
we
very
got there
much.
on that. You said that pure truth would be taught, and it has been taught.
Pure truth has been taught tonight.
So
Indeed.
Bednar,
Yeah.
so yeah, Bednar starts. I think as we previously discussed, Bednar does something that I like to call the night movement. He starts in one place on the board, and then he kind of goes in one direction, then all of a sudden just switches over here
Yeah.
to a place where you totally weren't going for. So he starts with Moroni's visit to Joseph Smith.
Hmm.
So I thought, okay, we're going for church history. Then he goes to the first thing that Moroni teaches to Joseph was the Book of Mormon. And I
Hmm.
thought, okay, we're going for Book of Mormon, keystone of our religion. Okay.
Yeah.
But then he goes, the second thing he teaches to him was about Malachi, and he
Hmm.
quotes the Book of Malachi about turning the hearts of
With
the
its
Father.
deviations from the King James version. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that he said that
Hmm.
because it's not copied at all because it deviates
Because it
slightly.
deviates slightly.
Yeah, yeah, not
Not
copied.
just Joseph's poor memory. It's nothing to
Yeah.
do with that.
So he's gone to hearts turning.
Hmm.
So then he's gone to this is why we build temples.
Hmm.
And then he's gone to preaching the gospel. He goes to the King Follett sermon.
Yes, I picked up on that because that seems to be canon when they want it to be. It's
That
revelation when they want it, and then when they don't, Gordon B. Hinckley's like, well, it's kind of just a saying. It's not really what we believe about becoming gods.
I'm waiting for one of them to preach babies on thrones.
Yes,
You know what I
infants on
mean?
thrones. Yeah, I want
Because they'd
that.
love that from the King Follett sermon. So I thought that was it blew my mind that they pick and choose on that one.
Yeah,
So we've gone from Moroni's visit all the way through preaching the gospel to redeeming the dead, and then he basically brings it all around. He makes this switch to the side. So he's already covered 4 or 5 topics that could be the main meat of his talk,
yeah. Mm.
and then he basically says covenants are essential, and if you break them, it's over.
I know why he does that, though. I think I've just worked out why he does it. Because Bednar always starts his talks with, I pray that the Spirit will direct you in what you will take away from this. So I think the reason he does this is he puts enough random things in his talks that everyone's going to take something from it, right?
Yeah,
That's what I put a note down here. Very little said in many words because it wasn't a coherent talk, but actually he's made loads of points, loads of buzzwords, loads of dog whistles to people's spirituality. People will have uplifting feelings about one of those things.
yeah.
Boom. Everyone gets something.
Um,
Sorry, go on.
no. I was just going to say he was obviously giving warnings about breaking covenants and different
Hmm.
things, and he brought up a story at the end about a sister who was upset that she'd separated with her husband and that their
Hmm.
temple marriage was broken and different things, and he was trying to comfort her. Um, and just before I do, my wife, bless her heart, she stayed with me throughout the session to make sure that I didn't like curl up into a ball and burn. Um, and she got
Solidarity.
particularly upset at this point
Hmm.
because he made a comment to this sister about how Jesus has already suffered all of
Hmm.
these feelings and everything, and he says, Why pay the price twice?
Yeah,
Because Jesus
yeah.
already paid it once. Why are you feeling bad now? Jesus has already felt bad for you, and
Hmm.
I just felt kind of like, or she pointed out to me that kind of nullifies anyone else's feelings about you're not allowed to feel
Yeah,
bad
yeah.
about anything because
Hmm.
Jesus has already done that for you.
Yeah.
So
It's
if you're
emotion
bad,
control on the bike
yeah,
model. It's a.
if you're bad and ungrateful,
Hmm.
it's your fault.
Yeah, exactly. No, totally. Your wife is a very profound woman.
Yes.
Yeah.
I,
Um,
I, I told her to come on with me and she just laughed. So sorry everyone.
there you go.
One day.
Well, it's all right. We can channel her through you. That's fine. He
Um,
mentioned being a covenant people, which seems to be a theme that's coming up.
yeah.
Which I'm getting Ramyumpton vibes. If I'm honest, wasn't that exactly what was said on the Ramyumpton when they got up there and said, "We thank the Lord that we are blessed and better than our brethren, and we are His chosen people."
No, absolutely. And I think that comes up later as well
Yeah.
when it comes to uh, Golden Junior's talk
Hmm.
on. the second coming,
Yeah.
and how
How it's
yeah,
soon, a little bit sooner than it was going to be, but still kind of vaguely in the distance. That.
yeah. The
Okay.
thief in the night has stopped off for a Mars bar. He's just waiting on the street corner. He's like, couple more shoes, love, and then we'll get on.
Well,
Something to note as well.
speaking of that, oh, go on.
I was going to say that Bednar starts
Hmm.
the Nephi. There's two prophets in this session that get absolutely just lambasted and
Yes, showered
raised
with
raised
yeah,
beyond. One is Rusty,
yeah.
as the living prophet, who, as you said, is mentioned in all but two talks.
Hmm.
But the other is Nephi, and
Yes, yeah,
I don't know if someone's been like, we said that awesome thing, less Wi-Fi, more Nephi, but we've not done it yet.
yeah.
This is the session in conference where we're going to
This
preach
is
that.
where we're
We're
gonna
going to
do
make
it.
that true.
Yeah.
Um, and we're going to treat it like revelation, that we knew that there was going to be a conference session one day where we had less Wi-Fi, more Nephi.
There we go. They're just building up for it.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
Joseph Smith when he made revelations about his own life and things he had total control over, and then said, "Look, it
Oh
happened."
look, woo! Guess I'm a
About
prophet.
yeah,
Yeah. So Shmuel, that's the same as patriarchal blessings. Just on a point before we get to Shmuel, you get told all this stuff about your life, and then you make it happen, and think, "Oh, wasn't this so prophetic?"
yeah, yeah,
Anyway, Shmuel, um, yeah, he said prophets, seers, and revelators are watchmen on the watchtower. They see things we cannot see. But then we also have Russell Nelson saying in 2020 April conference, little did I know that a global pandemic would make this conference so memorable for me.
yeah.
So, you know, I call a bit of BS on that, if I'm
Well,
honest.
I think one.
What did you get for him?
First of all, Schmeil looks so smart, and is he German? He's
Yeah,
somewhere of that
possibly.
ilk, and he
Yeah.
was he was dressed impeccably.
Mm.
Hats off. But the other thing was, could someone have passed him a towel? It was pre-recorded, and the poor gentleman was sweating like
Yeah.
goodness knows what. And I just thought, $140 billion, and you can't buy a good television producer.
Yeah. Someone
And
just to
the
knock
other
him
thing
down.
was,
Mm-hmm.
I had to look up on Google what he actually looks like, because the lighting was all from one side and it made his nose look like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
Again, poor video production quality, right?
So I just wish they'd spend a little bit more of their money on important things
Mm-hmm.
like video production.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
I mean, if
know,
I can do it on
exactly.
my meager budget, then
Yeah.
they can.
Well, I think Schmeil gets on the Nephi
Mm-hmm.
bandwagon again. So
I think
Bednar spoke
it really
about
takes it off. Yeah.
Bednar spoke about Nephi and his hunting bow. Schmeil speaks about Nephi and the plates
Mm-hmm.
and the trials. Um, ah, yes, and he does something else which I think kind of destroys the whole session.
Mm-hmm.
So he says he's talking about asking Heavenly Father for help,
Uh-huh.
and that's where we should go for all light and knowledge. He brings up the name of the church
Mm-hmm.
argument briefly,
Yeah.
it moves on very quickly, but then he says, prayer, we should go in prayer and scripture study for guidance,
Mm-hmm.
and that we get all answers from the scriptures. But then he doesn't use any scriptures to give us answers, and the whole session's like
Yeah.
that. They
Yeah.
quote from a scripture, and if you are a scriptorian, you can. I think there was only one, Amos 3:7, later on, where I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I know where that one comes from.
Yeah.
And there were some that were familiar to me,
Mm-hmm.
but without a footnote or the ensign actually there was no way you could actually follow along,
No,
uh,
no,
or check that they'd not misquoted it or only quoted a very small part of it or put an epsilon in there.
no. Mm-hmm.
At least in the past, they used to actually put it up on a screen and you could see where they'd missed out the truth. Instead, they just
Yeah.
bracketed the missing truth with lies.
Ellipses could just hide a lot, can't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think
So
that's a great point. Is that actually, they spend a lot of time quoting prophets, and occasionally they, quote scripture. I think actually, in fairness, Schmeil, yeah, I mean, he quoted, who did he quote? Richard G. Scott, Dallin
yeah,
H. Oakes, Russell M. Nelson, and that was it. Really, there's a bit of
yeah.
Jesus in the Second Coming, or Jesus' visit to the Americas rather, but apart
Well,
from that,
he
not
he
much.
dropped the lunch with Rusty immediately, didn't
Hmm.
he? Like he started as if no one knows who I am or how important I am, just let me do a name drop at the beginning. When I was first called, I had had lunch with President Nelson.
It's like, hang on, you're speaking at General Conference. You really need to name drop right now. You're already
Yeah,
here. Just get on with giving your message, please. Yeah.
yeah.
Should we go
So
on to Susan Porter?
yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, what did you get with her?
Um, Susan,
She
she
was
was just
at.
all about the love. She was
Mm
all about God's love, and then so she goes on about love and how it changes your view of the world. If you
hmm.
can
Mm
accept God's love into your life and understand it, then it changes your view on everything around you.
hmm. Mm
And again, she carries on the Nephi theme, and goes to another of the stories, the Tree of Life, and speaks about the light from the tree being
hmm.
God's
Yeah.
love. But then she takes an interesting turn, to the
Oh,
left,
yeah.
and she goes with an ex-Mormon. She doesn't call him that. She calls him a former member of the church, or a
Sorry.
sorry, Doug Vincent's back.
Yeah, he's
Um,
back and in fine form.
we need a
So,
new acronym: PBK, Prophet Butt Kisser.
sorry
Yeah,
to derail you there.
they're
But
all
yeah, she does. She takes a
PBK.
left turn into those that leave the church, right? And the three questions that this guy found difficult, which she conveniently never mentioned what those
I was
questions
going to say
were.
we were all left wondering, weren't we?
Yeah, what were his questions? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, he's miraculously. So, I think
Mm-hmm.
I think what she set up there was the parable of the ex-Mormon, and
Mm-hmm.
that this angry apostate had written questions in a letter
Mm-hmm.
to several of his friends.
In a letter which helps us invalidate the CES letter. Carry on.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
So he'd written this letter to his friends. We could write these talks.
Yeah.
Um, and then his friends, they'd all come for dinner. Now, the other thing here is they'd brought the spirit into his home, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they have dinner, they discuss the questions, um, to no avail. But then she states very clearly that this member then went back to his room, or ex-member goes back to his room to carry on a project of which we have no idea.
Project.
I'm like,
His dirty
what was he
heathen
doing?
activities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then during his dirty heathen activities, he has a come to Jesus moment,
Mm-hmm.
where he doesn't see, but he feels a bright light filling his soul. Now,
Indeed.
if there was any description of an orgasm and a private project in the bedroom, and you had to tell it to primary children, I think that could be. She is on the primary the primary presidency, but that could be. Oh well, Johnny went to his room for a project that he'd been working on for a while, and as he was carrying out his project, a bright light filled his soul.
Oh, if I ever have children, that's how I'm going to explain that moment
Yeah,
to them.
but then the worst thing was, she says, little Timmy comes back to church and everything, but she says that because he felt the love of God, he didn't need an answer to these questions,
Yes.
and that even when there's no clear answer to
Should just
questions,
stay in the boat.
shouldn't
Yeah.
stop you from moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, and then she gives President Nelson a hand job, um, metaphorically.
That's for
Sorry.
well, no, there's some problematic stuff in there. She gets very woke because she's our second female speaker, I believe, at this point of the
Yeah,
conference.
fantastic.
She said, so we're already level with the previous general conference in April, so we look like we'll have more women involved this time. But she said, sisters and brothers. Now, if I come for one of your after dinner chats, would you pass me a fork and knife and give me some pepper and salt, please? Because that's how jarring that phrase was to me, and I wonder whether it
Yes,
should be. Because and I don't know
I
how
didn't hear
purposeful it
that.
was. Yeah.
That
Yeah,
is so.
weird, isn't it?
I wonder if she'll get a spanking afterwards for
I
that.
don't know. And the only other thing she said that really stuck out to me was she talked about this woman in Russia who spoke to the primary children and she said this dear woman said to these primary children, if they were the only two children on earth, the Saviour would have suffered and died for them. Sounds lovely and sweet until you realise, so what she's doing is she's individualizing the great pain and suffering of Christ onto them and saying, no, no, no. Even if it was just you two individually would be the cause of this suffering.
You know, there was
That's not cool.
I heard a story from someone, and they were saying that they were from a good Catholic family, and that whenever they were doing something wrong in the street, their mother would scream at them, "You're putting Jesus on the cross again!" Whenever they were sinning, "You're just putting Jesus on the cross again," as a guilt trip. And it's that sort of thing. She's like, yeah, she's saying that you're not innocent enough, so that he would do it just for you. And that's, I can see where she's coming from with the
Yeah,
love, but the subliminal message there is you're dirty.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, should we go on to speaking of mental trauma? I think that's a good segue into Eric Kapishka's
Pishka.
talk. Um,
Um, yeah,
yeah.
trigger. I think what you said we
Oh,
discussed.
and he didn't quote Nelson either, actually. I don't think.
Ba, 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 ba. Possibly not. No,
No,
because there's
so
nothing that Nelson has said nice about people with mental illness.
there you go. Yeah, there's nothing
Really?
really you can go for there. So go
No.
on, give me what you got on Kapishka.
Um, so this one, I think this one hits home with me and my family quite.
Mhm,
When it came up, I was reticent about what he was going to say and
mhm.
how angry I might be at what he said.
Yeah,
But on one hand, I think he did a good job in explaining what is mental illness. I don't think the church has ever really
mhm.
tackled this head on. And I
Yeah.
think this
Jeffrey
is,
R. Holland's spoken about it. He did a little video where there was sort of like moody lighting and that sort of thing, and he did a bit of video talking about mental challenges. So he's spoken about it a bit.
in general conference.
Not sure over the pulpit in general conference.
Yeah.
No.
To the general membership of the church,
Mm,
they've gone head on with this, but I think they've lost
mm.
kind of what they were going for.
Yeah.
So he does a very good job at first speaking
Hmm.
about mental illness and how there are a lot of people that suffer from many different things. He listed mental illnesses like depression and
Yeah.
bipolar.
He even
Um,
gave a kind of a trigger warning at the beginning. He like how
yeah,
woke of him. He said like I'm gonna talk about these topics.
yeah, and
Cool. Let us know before. Carry
yeah,
on. Sorry.
he speaks about how they're taboo,
Yeah.
and how if we can all be like Jesus and love one another, then they don't need to be taboo. But then he takes a left turn as well,
Mm,
and he talks about himself, um, and how he has been affected by mental illness
hmm.
negatively, before he speaks about the victim and how maybe a toxic environment at church caused some of their issues. So
Hmm.
he speaks about his son, who went on a mission and returned after 4 weeks due to medical issues.
Mm,
Um, and then he speaks about how sad that made him and his wife, and how they were worried for themselves because they had this ideal of their son going on a mission, about the community around them and how they would judge the family. Um, and then it seems that the son was, I think he said something along the lines of, we then realized that he was upset as well
hmm.
by the whole thing, due to feeling guilty, and that he was on the brink of killing himself and that it took legions of angels to stop that from happening. And then he spoke about how the ward actually rallied around them and
Yeah.
different things. So I think it was great that they did that, and he pointed out a very important fact that it's never as bad as you actually think when you're in that place.
And we've
And
just got a bit of fact check coming from the comments. Sorry,
go
someone's saying
on,
Sister Reina Roberto spoke about mental illness in General Conference in 2019.
fantastic.
And some of the other stuff coming up in the comments as well. I'm tending to agree with comments like this, where 21st Century Saints has said they loved that he called out his own BS. It was honest. And I think that's kind of what he was saying. It wasn't kind of, oh, woe is me, we felt bad, we didn't realize our son was going to feel bad. I think what he was saying was we were so caught up in our own in feeling disappointed because of our own expectations of our son that we failed to see the effect it was having on him. And I think that was actually quite a that's how I read that, and that's just me, but that's how I read it. He was admitting that he didn't see what was going on because he was so caught up in his own things, and actually we need to pay more attention to the pressure that's on the youth, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, the warning. I think my personal experience on that may colour my view of that, because what I see from that, and he said some very nice things, which is fantastic. And he spoke about how the ward and everything came together, and I think the point of his talk, as you say, was to basically say it's never as bad. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it, and for people who aren't suffering, let's not shy away from it. Let's help these people, and do as Jesus would do. Speaks about obviously the worth of the soul, and then
But there's the elephant in the room, isn't there, around gay members of the church, about members of the LGBTQ community, because he talked about his son feeling suicidal because he didn't feel like he could measure up to the weight of responsibility or what he felt like he should be achieving in the church. Now, they can't seem to then connect the dots and see that that's also going to affect the youth of the church and the members of the church who aren't going to be able to live up to the expectations of the eternal family. Right? They're not, for some reason, they can't connect the dots that that's also going to cause these feelings and then take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Yeah, and I think that's where I kind of struggle, because I feel like there's a generation of parents and different things who kind of put the church and the culture and the image that they portray before what are strong feelings, and we create that problem.
Yeah.
That if we didn't have this culture of perfectionism, and someone, even I think it was him, he even spoke about being perfect, even as your Father in heaven, Jesus and your Father in heaven are perfect. And I'm like, I wouldn't have even brought that word into the message, because I think that's almost part of the problem.
It's that toxic perfectionism often is part of the issue.
And then I was particularly happy that he instructed people to study mental health, and then equally let down when he didn't cite independent sources for that study, but said that you could do it in the Gospel Library app.
Yeah, I mean, but then he on the flip side, he said focusing on growth is healthier than obsessing on our shortcomings. I thought that was a very good message.
Yes.
So I think it's a seesaw, definitely. Yeah.
I'm glad they did it anyway.
Absolutely.
I think they should do it more often. I think it's a bigger problem that the outside world have started to address, especially here in the UK. There's big television campaigns about taking time to talk. There's even been times when they've had dead air in popular programs, and they said, we're going to give you 2 minutes now of nothing. You're all there, talk to one another, which I think is fantastic. So if at the next conference they can give us 45 minutes of dead air,
I'll take that.
I think we can have a good conversation.
I think so, absolutely. So should we go on to Rasband?
Yes.
Yeah. He got straight on the Nelson train. He also gave a really weird statistic. 2,354 times the word things is mentioned. You've written it down as well.
I think he was going for a book. That's the
Yeah.
first thing I thought. I thought this is Rasband's Beatitudes. Gordon B. Hinckley. I know. I'm sure we all had it. The book How to Be.
Yeah.
And he was be this, be that, be that, and he brought it back to things. So I was thinking of book titles and what kind. I can't think of anything particularly rude, but I just thought, a book of things. Can you imagine that if everyone's like, "Do you remember in youth you were given a copy of the book of things?"
Yeah.
And but yeah, 2,354
2000
times.
random statistic. He then started quoting Nelson by saying, "Study with the desire to believe." So he's just pushing confirmation bias on people.
And he went
Love
to
your
Nephi.
neighbor. Your neighbor is everyone, unless they're gay. It seems to be the message of the church, because love your neighbor, and that means everyone. But then we're also going to call for musket fire, and we're also going to hold this harsh rhetoric. I think it's a problem for me.
Well, it almost comes full circle to the last one because he's next. So he's given these 7 items
Yeah,
of
yeah.
things of his soul. I wrote that. That's misquoted, but
I mean, that could be his book title.
things of
Things
his
of the
soul.
soul. Yeah.
Things of the soul. Yeah, but I think it was he spoke about going to a young lady's home, didn't he? And she asked him what was important. So he gives these 7 things. So as you say, love God and Jesus, love thy neighbor, and then he says love thyself, which brings me back to the project in the bedroom. But then it also ties in with the last talk because he then says that you're supposed to love thyself as thy neighbor. And if you take that to its nth degree and go to Jeffrey R. Holland, who wants to shoot his neighbor, you come back to suicidality. And I think they've totally connected the dots there.
They've gone full circle. And what's interesting was, that's where he started that story, right? Rather than just getting straight to talking to the girl, he started by saying, "Have you ever had an apostle in your home?"
Oh, yes.
And she goes, "No." So what is that other than just like, "I'm an apostle"? What?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when he said it because I was just like, it's like going and being like, have you ever had a professional footballer in your home?
Exactly.
No, not.
No.
Well, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here now.
He was. But then I noticed as well when he starts quoting Rusty is when he starts tearing up slightly.
Yeah.
So he quotes the Apostle Peter, he quotes Moses, he quotes Nephi about record keeping. But it's when he gets to Russell M. Nelson.
He's a complete PBK.
Yeah, he doesn't cry because that would be too much. It'd be obvious,
Yeah.
But when Rusty watches that back, he'll be like,
a bit of a tear.
Moisture.
His
eyes got claggy.
Yeah. Because he basically ended up by saying, "We need more Nelson." He gives revelatory messages even in press briefings because he was like, we're getting so much more Nelson, and he's giving revelatory messages. So next time Nelson says something mental in a press briefing, I'm going to call it official church position, thanks to Rasband, and just go for it.
For completeness, he's of his 7 things. Number 4 was keep the commandments. Number 5, hold a temple recommend, even if there's not a temple around, which I would, there's at least got to be a planned temple within 100 miles because I think that's what they're doing. They're just pockmarking the earth.
Yeah.
So there is no excuse not to hold a temple recommend. Number 6, be joyful. And then number 7, as you say, he gets on to follow, and he really stresses the living prophet. And then he goes into his Russell M. Nelson diatribe with regards to he makes him sound so open and everything, but I'm yet to see him on like Saturday night.
Yeah, he's not on Oprah.
Jordan or you know what I mean.
I want to see him on 60 Minutes with Larry King. That's what I want to see.
Did Larry King die recently?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think.
Well, if so, R.I.P. Larry King.
I think an episode with of 60 Minutes with Larry King with anyone is more likely than an episode of 60 Minutes with Russell M. Nelson and anyone.
That's fair. Yeah. No, yeah. I want to see him on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. That's what I want to see.
Yeah,
There you
yeah. But then he chooses. This is a good one. Okay,
go.
he
Mm-hmm.
chooses to go after the COVID deniers and the anti-maskers. Now I don't stand anywhere on that. This is not a political
Yep.
thing. Okay, but he stands somewhere on it.
Yeah.
And what he gives the story of Nehemiah maybe, and Elisha. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and Nehemiah is told to be healed. He should go down into the River Jordan and wash 7 times. And he says, "No, the prophet's coming to heal me."
Mm-hmm.
And then he speaks to his staff, and they say, "Well, the prophet said, go down into the River
Mm-hmm.
Jordan and wash 7 times." So he goes down, he washes, and he's healed. So then he says that we should hear the words of the prophet, ponder the words of the prophet, and follow the words of the prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Do not pick and choose from the prophet's advice,
Yeah.
because if Nehemiah had done that, he wouldn't have been healed.
And
So,
let's be honest, we need to listen to Elisha because I'm pretty sure it's him that called she bears out of the wood to tear up 42 children.
yes.
So yeah, you don't mess with him.
But what he's done there is he's taken a health related parable,
Yeah.
he's taken advice from a prophet on
Mm-hmm.
how to overcome
A health
the
trial.
health
Yeah.
related thing, and then he's taken the person in need of healing, kicking back against the prophet and saying, "Don't be stupid. That's
Yeah.
really simple," or "That doesn't make sense to me." And then he said, but eventually he listened and was
Yeah.
healed.
Yeah.
And to me, that's
Oh, no, I totally agree. That was fully aimed at the folks that
yeah,
aren't heeding the prophet's latest counsel to get vaccinated
yeah.
and wear a mask.
But they probably
Absolutely.
won't see it.
Yeah.
So
Right. Okay. Let's go on to. I believe he was a Kiwi. He sounded like a
I thought
Kiwi.
it was South African.
Oh, it could be. Could be.
I think Christopher Golden Jr. But I
Oh,
think
that first name sounds a bit
yeah,
Safa, to be fair. Yeah.
I think it's South African. My wife
Okay.
thought it was English, and I'm like, "Are you English? Listen to him. He's not English." Um,
Definitely Southern Hemisphere.
but he came by teleconference from an unknown location.
Yeah.
But I can
Much like
only
you,
assume
PD.
on this earth.
Yeah.
Yes, the no expense spared in masking my location. Black
There you go.
curtain.
But he said not even angels can correct apostates' preconceived notions. So he basically went after the idea of confirmation bias and seeing and having preconceived notions, and not even angels can change that or whatever. Pot kettle black, members of the church are exactly the same.
Yes.
Members of the church are exactly the same. They believe the Book of Mormon is true, and you could not change their mind if you tried.
Yeah.
A lot of them. So
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has their preconceived notions. Everyone has their biases.
Yeah. And then he moves on to. Yeah, I've noted down here that the only thing he's missing is a sandwich board and a megaphone, and to be stood in a town centre somewhere screaming the end is nigh, because he. So
Yeah, he was
I
proper
wanted to
us
start with
versus them against the world, wasn't he? He was very, very sort of
yeah.
yes.
Well, he starts with the first coming of Christ and how
Yeah.
everyone killed him. Okay, how the Nephites didn't believe in the signs that they were being told about the coming of Christ. How the Jews rejected and killed him. Then he goes on to basically speaking about intellectuals and the knowledge of the world. However good it seems, won't get you anywhere. And it won't lead to God, I think is what he said, because God is not logical.
It's a very good point
But
from Geneva. Again, she's absolutely
apostates,
slaying it.
so open quote, apostates are so broken, hard-hearted, that not even angels can help them, close quote. That contradicts the Book of Mormon narrative about Alma the Younger. That is so true.
Yeah, very good point. Excellent
Oh
point.
my gosh.
Yeah, well, it's the
Fantastic.
same as when Bednar did that whole thing where he kind of like manhandled that child from behind, told him, "Well, now you're in Satan's clutches," right? It's like you're not
can't
in
help
control
you,
anymore. So this is antithetical to the teaching that Christ will bring us back if we repent.
Yeah. Well, Golden
Yeah,
Golden Jr. basically goes into a rant about the second coming
yeah,
and that the
keeping the
faithful
time
have
frame
nothing to fear.
vague. Yeah,
I think he said something about it's
It's
coming,
closer.
but then he couches it and hedges his bet
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
saying there are still some hard times to come before then.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think they
Yeah.
say that so that when Armageddon, COVID was their Armageddon,
Hmm.
and they didn't really do anything about it. Well, we had 2 worldwide fasts that clearly worked. But yeah, this I think he couched it a bit because, as I said before, the thief in the night has stopped off for a candy bar.
Yes.
And how big's that candy bar? But yeah, the
Yeah.
faithful have nothing to fear. The wicked
Hmm.
are in trouble. So
Yeah.
don't be deceived. Don't become the wicked. Prepare for the second coming. And then the way you prepare for the second coming, he quotes Amos 3:7 about God speaking through the mouths of his
Hmm.
prophets. And then he turns around and gives Rusty a right old licking on his bald head and says, he's the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't know if afterwards they turn around and wink at him and they're just like, got you.
Yeah. I got your
You
back,
know,
bud. Yeah. I don't know what it is. Do they get paid? Like, do they get extra pay? Like, if they they quote him, I don't know. And
oh
then
no, go
because we
on.
then move on to Villanueva, don't we? Who
Oh, before we do,
go
just
on, go on.
quickly,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Golden Junior said something fantastic with regards to the prophet's words, and he was talking about how the prophets we follow the living prophet, but how the gospel changes. So they've all gone on about living prophets, and we know that the reason they go on about that is so that you don't quote dead prophets to them
Hmm.
who say the exact opposite to the living prophet. And he says that the gospel through the mouths of the living prophet, the gospel is becoming more pure.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, for a church that says the full and everlasting gospel was restored in the 1800s, we've been purifying it for a long bloody time.
Yeah. That's a long refiner's fire.
Yeah.
That is...
How many times have you distilled that?
Oh my goodness.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a good
Villanueva.
point. This one, like he started straight in with COVID. Like he just mentioned it straight up by name, and then without any visible emotion on his face, told us that his brother, sister, and brother-in-law died, and that all medical attempts have been made to save their lives, and despite that and prayers and all these sorts of things, they died.
Mm-hmm. And
But then what does he say at the end of his talk?
well, yeah, he kind of comes back on himself.
Yeah,
But project in your room.
yeah.
But sorry,
I just got that.
it came out faster than it got to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh dear.
Uh,
Right.
so yeah, so he speaks about this terrible, terrible thing, which for anyone, like I wanted to give him a cuddle.
Yeah.
And he speaks of the compassion of Jesus, um, and then he speaks. He brings more death into it because he speaks about a missionary who was on his mission with this missionary whose mother and brother died whilst he was out. And he expected that missionary to go home,
Hmm.
but the missionary didn't. He remained on his mission, faithful. And then just, I don't know, a few weeks later, this missionary gets stabbed in a robbery. Well, I can only assume he meant stabbed by injured with a knife, but didn't want to say the word stabbed.
Hmm.
So he shows a photo of him with this elder who's got some sort of pain-killing gas
Hmm.
going on in hospital. But he says even then they expected him to go home, and he didn't. He was handing out passing on cards and leaflets to people in
Which
the
seems
hospital.
really insensitive to the other general authority whose child came home after 4 weeks and almost killed himself.
Oh my
Right?
god!
That harping on about how this missionary just carried on and carried on and carried on seems
Yeah,
rather insensitive. I've only just thought of that, but it
how
seems,
good
yeah.
does that missionary feel now?
Yeah.
The one who came home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
Anyway,
anyway,
sorry.
he's virtue signaling massively about this
Hmm.
missionary and basically saying that it was the compassion of Jesus that helped him through and he served his entire mission and didn't go to his mother's funeral. And you know, he had. Uh, they say missionaries are protected, but this guy, like, all the protection must have been on everyone else, and all the crap just slipped in on him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so then he goes on to list other trials from Nephi. So he
Mm-hmm.
goes through Nephi's trials of with the plates, collecting the plates and his brothers, of the broken bow, of building a ship, and then ultimately being bound on the ship. At which point we get what has to be the front cover of the Book of Mormon prophets pin-up
Mm.
for 2022.
Look at those biceps.
Yeah, well, it's a very non-Israeli looking Caucasian,
Yeah.
long-haired Nephi
Yeah.
bound to the mast of a ship.
Mm-hmm. Surfer
Yeah,
dude Nephi.
yeah, but
Yeah.
hey, who are we to question? But
Indeed.
then he basically says, when all this stuff happens, don't murmur,
No.
be thankful,
Mm.
And yeah, then he goes on to the story of the feeding of the 5,000 and the miracle that was.
Yeah.
And you basically think, well, you've ended with a miracle
Yeah.
that you could have used, you could have used a
At the
miracle at the
beginning.
start to save
Yeah.
your family.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seemed a little bit backwards.
Yeah. A little bit. Yeah. And the idea that irony doesn't occur to him. That the
Yeah.
same God that does that didn't save those
Mhm.
members of his family.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
it's
he adds to the slobber on Rusty's head as well
oh,
with
it does. Yeah,
a big fat smacker. Was saying that he's an excellent example of ministering.
yeah, yeah. And someone else earlier, I can't remember who it was, but someone said he's a great public speaker or whatever. They no, I can't remember who that was, but someone just threw that compliment out there. Yeah,
If yeah, so final
but then
speaker.
Gary E. Stevenson refused to get on the bandwagon of Rusty Lovin. Um, he just came out, and I think this was one of the best structured talks I've heard in a long time. The content, I'm not going to get into the content just right now, but he started off by saying that there would be two things he'd talk about, and then he'd give four examples of it. So he listed his four things, then gave four very clear examples, and then tied it up at the end. It was structurally a very good bit of public speaking, so I want to give him credit for that.
Yes.
But he did start with the us and them and started saying the gospel's simple, the world is complex, so don't let the complex world get into your pure gospel. He kind of played into this idea of the gospel must be defended in its sanctity, and the problem is when you make things sacred, that's when people start to go mental defending it, and it creates a lot of problems.
Yeah, and I think he was. I may be wrong, but I thought he was the first one to use open close quote
Oh,
for your bingo.
perhaps, yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Didn't
he's the only
notice.
one I've noted it down on. It stood out
Mm,
to me because there was a shot waiting on the table
mm,
on open close quote, and that one tasted particularly good.
nice.
Um, so yeah, but he goes to the General Handbook of Instructions.
He does. And even goes so far as to say, and if that makes you think, oh, I don't want to look there, don't be afraid.
Yeah, don't be afraid, child. Come in.
Yes. Come into my white van, have some Haribo. It's all good.
But he basically, so I may be wrong. It's been a little while since I've been to church, but when I was at church, we always went back to the threefold mission of the church.
That's what yeah.
Yeah, and now they've uncomplicated and uncluttered it by going for a fourfold mission of the church.
And it still
Uh,
contains the original three elements, I'm pretty sure.
it does, yeah.
Yeah.
I think all they've done is so we've got number one is live the gospel.
Yeah.
I think that's the new one.
Yes.
Number two, care for others,
Yeah.
those in need.
Mm.
Number three, invite all. So you got your missionary
Yeah,
work,
mission work.
and then
Yeah.
number four is the temple. So
Redeeming of the dead. Yeah.
the threefold mission of the church was redeeming the dead, missionary
Yeah.
work, and
and helping the poor and needy. Yeah. Or,
there you go.
yeah.
Yeah. So living the gospel, they forgot that one for many a year. They've corrected it
There we go.
and added it in. But it's pretty straightforward. What he told stories, basically anecdotes from other members about how they fulfilled all of those four things.
And it added to the multicultural parade, didn't it? Because all of them were foreign. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one, they can only live the gospel in Denmark. They can only care for other than Colombia. You can only invite people to church in Cape Verde, and you can only go to the temple in Ukraine.
There you go. Well, Freiburg, then Ukraine.
Yeah. Well, yes. She went to Freiburg first. So 2 locations. I'm just upset that none of those locations were on Kolob where I am.
Well, there we are. We have been corrected, actually.
Oh, go on.
Live the Gospel used to be called Perfecting the Saints.
Oh.
So the new one is actually caring for the poor and needy. Thanks to our friend Peter Bleakley at Mormon Civil War, and also Doug Vincent pointed that out too. So the new one is caring the poor and needy. So maybe we might see the church use some of its 140 billion to actually start doing some work.
Wow.
Sign my petition, everyone. That'll get them. Never so aggressively advertise that. It's late.
Sorry. Nemo put on this morning as well, didn't you, about how to oppose?
Yes.
And I thought, the church don't know where I am. They've not got my Kolob address. But I thought I'll put my old neighbour's address down so I can still send this letter to the old stake president. And then I thought, my neighbour would kill me when the missionaries started coming around asking for Brother PD. So something else. He quotes Moses, and he speaks about Elias and Elijah.
Yeah.
Now I'm not sure, but I'm sure I've read somewhere
they're both the same person.
They're the same person.
They are absolutely the same person, and it is an example of Joseph Smith's just lack of understanding of these biblical characters. They're Greek and Hebrew forms of the name. Yeah,
I've put same person, but he's saying they're doing different things, and I'm like, does that come back to like a multiple personality disorder, and they're just trying to softball it? Eventually, they're gonna say, figured it out, they were the same person.
All along. It was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation, everyone.
Yeah, I can't believe that they're still quoting things like that at General Conference.
When any knowledgeable scriptorian will look at that and go, "This is just not legit."
Yeah,
the same as when because they said the whole thing about Nephi's family needing the records. And that's dangerously close to having the discussion about Deutero Isaiah and the fact that some of the things that were on those records shouldn't have existed at the time.
Yeah.
So, those sorts of narratives, I'm surprised they're still getting close to them.
I had a conversation with someone about Deutero Isaiah, and they said that Lehi had heard it all and remembered it.
There we go.
At which point, why did they have to kill Laban?
Yeah, there's just a needless beheading. Thank you to Doug Vincent, who sent a super sticker.
Wow.
$20, $20. Thank you very much for that. So needless killing. Although we know the killing of Laban was needless anyway, because it said that it was better for one man to perish than an entire nation to dwindle in unbelief. Mm-hmm. But then that entire nation proceeded to dwindle in unbelief when the Lamanites killed them all. And Nephi saw a vision of that happening, so he should have twigged and gone, hang on a minute, that justification for killing Laban is a load of rubbish, because they're going to dwindle in unbelief anyway.
Yeah. But that scripture, as a missionary, I'd visit every week, go to a different church so I could fully understand other aspects of Christianity. And the Seventh-day Adventists were the nicest people we met, and it was fantastic because you'd spend all Saturday with them and they'd feed you fantastic food. But in their Sunday school, they were having an argument about Goliath, David and Goliath, and how can David be in the right when he's killed Goliath and he's committed murder, And I thought, well, I'll blow them away. So I pulled out the Book of Mormon in a quad, so it just looked like a big Bible. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
"The good book says," and then I quoted that scripture. Now, I'm sure there are many Seventh Day Adventists on that side of Kolob who are wondering, I still can't find that
Just
scripture in
wear
the
in the
Bible
Bible.
that stopped me worrying about David killing Goliath. But I think it all comes back to the same thing, doesn't it? Of it's okay to do bad things if the Lord says so.
Yeah. Well, someone's put it in words. If a voice in your head is telling you to kill people, that's a sign you need to seek professional help, not a sign you're talking to God.
Yeah, and I think I like to say, if your imaginary friend is telling you what I should be doing, please go away.
Well, on that note, we've managed to do this little roundup, this little chat around conference, so other people didn't have to sit through 2 hours of it. You just have to sit through an hour of us. I feel that's a fair trade-off.
I feel like we gave them added
Yeah,
value.
insight. Yeah, there wasn't a ton of stuff in this. There was no lazy learners or lax disciples. There was no
No,
threaten your children with eternal death. There was none of that sort of stuff. But I still think there was some stuff there to talk about. I was really happy with this. How are you feeling about all this, PD?
I think it was good. I feel better after watching it than I thought I would. But I think that's because I was started drinking at the beginning of it. So felt definitely better by the end of it.
There you go.
But yeah, I was waiting for a lazy learner or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
And
yeah. Something
sad that
mental.
sad that we didn't get it. But
Well, there'll be another halftime show tomorrow, and make sure to tune in for that.
the hashtags remain the same.
The
Sorry.
hashtags remain the same. I oppose. Yeah.
Hear,
Oh, the
hear,
hashtags from
hear him.
them. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, hear
Yeah.
him.
Hear
I
him.
was upset that we didn't get a new hashtag.
No.
Obviously they've run out of marketing budget or something.
Mm,
But
indeed.
yeah, no, it's good.
That's awesome. So, PD, give us a final plug of where to find you, what it is you do.
No, yeah, absolutely. You can find me on the recommended channels on Nemo's channel. It'll be down there somewhere. And you'll see my little man. Some of the things that we do can be explicit. So little ears probably aren't the best around. But some of the things we do are quite serious as well. And we speak about serious topics. So we go backwards and forwards a little bit. Depending on the guest. You can find some comical stories on the blog, which is at www.priesthooddispatchers.com. And something that we almost fallen flat on its face, and there are TBMs taking the mick out of me across the world. But it's the I Oppose TikTok campaign. And everyone's liking it, but no one is opposing. So I've got TVMs messaging me like, oh, yeah, I bet they heard that. So the point is that we all get a chance to add our opposition by duetting a TikTok,
Yeah.
which is on.
Well, if I were on TikTok, I would do it, but I'm not on TikTok because I'm a boring old man inside.
But you're younger than me.
Yeah.
I'm with the middle-aged dads who found TikTok in lockdown too, and was
Right.
just like, "What majesty is this?" So yeah,
Yeah.
TikTok.
But
Um,
I've put out my videos about how people can oppose as well. I think we should really definitely get some things moving forward, some opposing votes move forward this conference. Let them
Awesome.
know that, or let your state president know certainly that you're not happy with what's going on if that's the case.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think we'll call it a night. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Thank you very much, PD, for joining me.
Thank
And
you.
if you like this video, make sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, go over to Priesthood Dispatches, like their channel. There's a link in the show notes for his channel as well. Thank you very much, everyone. Until tomorrow, bye. See you later.
Bye.